Hey YouTube, I'm here to talk about Reboot the Guardian Code and give my thoughts on this new show. Now basically it's a reboot slash semi-continuation of the original series, though there's been a big time gap, so whether it will link more to the original or not is yet to be seen, but I'll get to that. Basically the premise of the new show is that these four high school kids, Austin, Parker, Trey and Tamara, have been chosen to be the next generation of Guardians, and even though they're humans, they're users. They've been kind of jacked into cyberspace, and they can download their bodies into cyberspace now to become Guardians to stop this hacker called the Sorcerer from causing chaos in there, because he's trying to shut down the internet and shut down technology for some reason. And the Sorcerer enlists the help of Megabyte, who seems to have been in some kind of stasis for a while, and he gets reactivated and the Sorcerer takes control of him. Now this is very far removed from the original show, which has caused a lot of fan backlash, which I'll get onto later, and I'm a massive fan of the original series, so obviously my initial reaction as well was, what the hell is this? But just because it's Reboot, I wanted to give the show a chance. Now I'll talk about the characters first. The main character is called Austin. He's the leader of the group, and he's a nice enough character. I don't have a problem with him. They haven't developed any of the characters all that much, really. But Austin, he's just your typical nice guy. He reminds me, though, of the stereotype of like a cool 90s kid. If you've ever seen that movie Airborne, and the main character in that, he's just like his haircut and the way he's into skating, dude, and all this. It seems like he was written by someone who maybe grew up in the 90s and has this stereotype of what a cool kid is like. And I don't know, maybe kids are like that nowadays, but I couldn't help thinking of 90s kid every time I saw this guy. Then you got his best friend Parker, who's probably the best written of the four and gives the best performance, but he may just be given the best performance because he's given more to do. He's a typical kind of geeky guy who has trouble getting the girl, but I think that makes him sympathetic. I mean, we can all kind of sympathise with that kind of character who sort of wants to be cooler, he wants to be a bit more of a jock maybe, he wants to attract the girls, but he just can't quite do it. I think we've all been there. I mean, not me, of course, but, most people. Then you've got Trey, who's this black jock type character, and he's really not been developed much at all. Even though he's had a couple of episodes that have sort of revolved around him, it tends to be the same thing. His dad moans at him because he wants him to do better in an exam, so he does better in an exam. His dad moans at him because he wants him to play basketball, so he wins the basketball game. He doesn't really seem to have to overcome these obstacles. It's just kind of quite simplistically written. It's just, oh, my dad's moaning at me, so I've now done something that will show him up for a bit. Though there was a scene at the end of one episode where Trey's dad is having a go at him, and Austin comes over and defends Trey, and he's like, "Sir, your son saved my life." And it was quite a good scene showing that there is a friendship and a camaraderie growing between them. I bought that scene. It was performed and written well enough that I believed that these two characters were becoming friends and forming a bond. So there are little nuggets like that are good. And then you've got Tamra, who's this blonde girl who's into blogging, and she's probably the least developed of the four. They haven't really given any focus on her character at all, other than she's got a bit of an attitude, which I find a lot of TV shows and movies fall into this trap. When they're trying to write a strong female character, they just make her have a bit of an attitude, and it doesn't make for the most likable character, really, but hopefully they'll build on her in future episodes. And then the fifth semi-human character with the good guys is Vera, who was a sprite who has transferred her consciousness into a human body and is now helping the gang in the real world, telling them when there's danger and when they need to jack into cyberspace. And a lot of the fish out of water humour centres around this character, and it's so cringeworthy. There's just some awful scenes of her doing silly dances and stuff like this. But the actress herself actually gives a really good performance. I buy her as a robot. She's got the mannerisms down. She has this sort of movement she does with her neck. And even though she's an irritating character, I can't knock the actress because I think she's doing exactly what she's supposed to be doing. And she's got the perfect voice for it as well. I can imagine her voice coming from my phone, giving me directions or whatever. She's kind of really committed to the role well. So I don't blame the actress for it. It's just the character, because of the kind of humour that's been written for her, it can be a bit cringy sometimes, but I guess it's aimed at a younger audience, not someone in the late 20s, Then for the bad guys, there's the sorcerer, who is basically just a nutter who wants to take down technology for some reason. They haven't given us any glimpse into his motivations so far. But as I say, he has enlisted Megabyte, and we get a great scene introducing Megabyte. It's a really good shot of the character. He's kneeling down and he seems to be in some kind of stasis, and the camera pans around him and then his eyes open, and then some good music in the background. That's one thing I'll say about this show. I do like the score. And then we see him rising up slowly and wondering what's going on, and then he gets upgraded into his new body, which it's not as good as the old design, but it has grown on me. I actually don't have a problem with it now. It's still my least favourite probably of the three designs. I definitely don't like it as much as Megabyte's original design. And of course it does raise the question of why is Megabyte back in his original body? But I like how he's been performed. Tony J unfortunately is dead now, so there's no way they could obviously get him back to voice the character. And the voice actor they've got, for the most part, does a pretty good job, especially as the series goes on. I think he kind of gets into the voice he wants to do more. It takes a few episodes for him to kind of nail it. But I like how he's voiced, and I like how he's been written. I think they've written Megabyte pretty well. Hopefully at some point he will overcome the sorcerer and take him down, because I don't like Megabyte being someone else's servant, but the way they've written it, he still seems like Megabyte. You can still see that there's that rebellion in him, but he has no choice at the minute because the sorcerer can delete him. Now we do see what are described as binomes in the background, but they look very different to the original binomes, and they don't seem to have individual personalities. They all just seem like mindless drones going about doing their job. And I really don't like that, because part of what made the original reboot work, part of the charm of it and how it built a bigger world, was that all these little characters were given a bit of personality, in their design, or even if they only had one line, they would show a quirk to their character or some eccentricity. The writers would put the effort into really making it feel like a lived-in world. Whereas in the new show, because they're all just mindless drones, it makes it hard to really care about what's happening. Why do the new Guardians need to defend cyberspace if everyone in cyberspace is seemingly just a mindless drone anyway? It doesn't make there feel like there's much consequence to whatever Megabyte may do. And also the systems that we've seen the Guardians visit so far all look pretty much the same. It's just kind of something floating in cyberspace with lights flashing in the background. Whereas in the original show, each system was very unique and it looked like a city. And it's a shame, because when we do finally get to Mainframe in the last episode, in episode 10, Mainframe looks great. Other than being underpopulated, they have some great shots moving through the city. And if only every episode had a city like that. It doesn't have to be set in Mainframe, but if you're going to be visiting different parts of cyberspace, then show us different cities and how unique they are from each other, and have actual characters wandering around in the background to inhabit these worlds, to build a larger world. Now, a lot of the episodes have pretty much the same plot. It's, Megabyte is trying to infect some part of the cyberspace. The Guardian's going to stop him. But there are two episodes that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to talk about. First one, I can't remember the name of the episode now, but basically this AI system, which is on an app that people download to their phones. You get these in real life. I don't know much about apps and stuff, but I know that there's apps you can get where you can talk to it and say, can you give me a decent restaurant to go to? And it will say, there is a restaurant within 5 miles of here. Or, give me a good recipe for dinner. And they'll get, a good recipe for dinner would be chicken and curry. And it's basically an app like that that's given people advice and help in their life. But Megabyte infects it, or the sorcerer, and it goes crazy. And you've got people saying, "Oh, what shall I have for dinner?" And it's saying, "You don't need any dinner. You are fat enough as it is." And it's kind of funny, some of it. But at one point, this woman, she's got a phone kind of connected to the car, plugged in, and the app takes over the car, and it causes the car to keep stopping and starting and swerve off the road and almost crash the car and kill the woman. So by the end of the episode, obviously, she is really angry at this, and she says to Vera, the AI type character who got a human form, "Can you take this app off my phone, please? Because it almost killed me." And Vera is adamant, like, "No, you must allow technology to help you. You must keep the app on your phone." And eventually the woman's like, "Oh, okay, then just leave it on there." And it's like, no, it almost killed you. Don't leave it on there. I don't care if it can give me directions or give me a recipe. It almost bloody killed me. Take it off the phone. But the episode seemed to have this bizarre moral message that no matter what happens, we must hand over control of our lives to technology. And it was just really odd moral message. I think a better ending would have been if they had accepted that, yeah, technology's great, but maybe we shouldn't hand over too much control to it. Maybe we shouldn't hand over too many decisions in our life. Maybe it doesn't hurt to actually pick up a book and look for a recipe and things like this. But no, it's like, even though the episode showed that this app had got corrupted and almost killed the woman by crashing her car, and this had happened all over the world, so God knows how many accidents and things may have been caused by this, if it could do it to this one woman's car. The moral of the message is no, actually, even if it almost kills you, you must not get rid of apps from your phone. And it's just, I found that really odd. And then, of course, the next episode I want to talk about is episode 10, Mainframe Mayhem, where we get a return of the original characters and even the original cast for the most part. They bring back Bob, Dot, Enzo, Frisket, and Hexadecimal, and Bob, Dot, and Hexadecimal are all voiced by their original voice actors, which is great to hear. Once again, as with Megabyte having his original body back, Hexadecimal's in her original body, Dot's in her original outfit, there's no sign of Matrix and Andrea. And it does give the impression that the makers of Guardian Code have only watched a few episodes of season 1 of the original, that they don't really understand what made that show so great, and they haven't watched, unfortunately, season 2, the end of season 2 onwards, where the show really picks up and becomes the classic we all know and love. And it's a shame, because I would like to think they have watched that and that they are going to build upon that at some point. But, you know, I think a lot of fans are worried that they haven't. And this episode, on the one hand, I understand that most people do remember Reboot from season 1. People who aren't hardcore fans they didn't really watch season 3 and 4, unfortunately, and they missed the best part. So I guess this episode is maybe just to appeal to a wider audience than just the hardcore fans. But it is worrying that there was no Matrix and Andrea or anything. And other than Bob, Dot, Enzo, and Frisket and Hexadecimal, the city is deserted. There's no one in the background. And as I said earlier, the original show did a great job of always inhabiting these worlds that we were visiting. We don't even see Fong. But Hexadecimal in this, as with Megabyte, she has a great introduction. There's a shot that goes through lost angles to Hexadecimal's tower, and then we go inside and we see her talking to herself, and Megabyte introduces himself to her, and she sort of doesn't recognise him to start off with. It's a great scene. There are little nuggets of that in the Guardian Code, which make me feel like the show has potential. There are scenes that I think are really well shot. As I said earlier, I like the score as well, at least during the episodes. At the end of the episodes, over the title credits, they have this sort of really out of tonal pop song that comes on that just doesn't seem to fit the show. But the actual score during the episodes, I really enjoy. But then we get to Bob, Dot, and Enzo, and for half of it, they're written quite well. But when we initially meet Bob, he just starts quoting the titles of the original series, saying, "I come from the net, from people, systems, cities, to this place, Mainframe." And it's just really unnatural the way he says it, the way it's kind of shoehorned into the conversation. It doesn't flow naturally. And I get that it's, a nod to the original series, but it was just very clumsily done. also Bob, Dot, and Enzo look terrible. They're just the way they're animated, the way they're designed. They look like plastic mannequins or something. They will look worse here than they did 15, 20 years ago, which is crazy. The only reason I can think of is that because they're not going to be regular characters in the show, the animators just didn't have the budget to put the effort in with them, because Hexadecimal looks fantastic. So for her to look so good, but Bob, Dot, and Enzo to look so bad, I kind of feel that it must be because Hexadecimal is going to go on to be a regular character in the show from the way it seems at the end of episode 10 anyway, whereas Bob, Dot, and Enzo, maybe they won't appear again, or maybe they'll only be in one more episode, so the effort just wasn't put in to creating character models of them that are as good as Hexadecimal, but they look awful. Now, episode 10, whoever wrote episode 10, with one hand seems to be high-fiving fans of the original series, and with the other hand slapping us around the face, because, yeah, we get all the original characters back, we're back in Mainframe, it's all looking pretty good, and then they almost completely flush away any goodwill that they have garnered by cutting away every now and then to this guy in the real world who is this fat, balding, middle-aged man living in his mother's basement who is obsessed with Reboot. He's got posters on the wall, he's got all the toys and everything, a big Mike the TV standee, and he's portrayed as obviously a complete loser, and he gets all excited because Mainframe's back online, which doesn't really make sense because it turns out Mainframe is in a computer system at the teenager's high school, the main character's high school. That gets reactivated, which reactivates Mainframe the city. How and why this is connected to this guy's computer in his basement is never explained. But he gets excited by this and he pulls out a video game, the Starship Alcatraz game from season 1 of the original series. And he's like, finally I can play this game again. Once again, why he can't play that game on his computer at any other time is never explained. It doesn't really make sense to me. So he puts the game in and he's like, yes, finally I can win this game. I'm finally going to win Starship Alcatraz. And as well as all the questions that are raised by this guy having Reboot merchandise in this universe where Reboot is real, how does he know that Bob and Dot and Mainframe and Matrix and Megabyte all exist? How has he got merchandise based on these characters who actually exist secretly in cyberspace? It's not like this is common knowledge in the world that there are intelligent beings living inside the computers, and yet he's got all this merchandise. How does that make sense? But on top of all that, if he's such a fan of Reboot and loves the characters, why would he be so happy at the thought of playing and winning a game which he knows will kill everyone? If he wins the game, he's going to kill the character, he's going to kill Bob and whoever else is trapped in the game and destroy part of Mainframe. Why is he excited to do that if he's a fan of Reboot? But how can he be a fan of Reboot when in this universe Reboot is real and nobody knows it exists? The whole thing raises so many questions that are unanswered. It doesn't make any sense, and yet it is seemingly shoehorned into this episode purely as an up yours to fans of the original series by saying, this is what we think of you, you're a bunch of losers. And I just don't understand it. Why would you go out of your way to be kind of petty and spiteful like that and alienate part of your audience? It's not like Reboot has a massive audience as it is. The old show even didn't have as huge an audience as something like Transformers or Ninja Turtles. You know, you can't afford to alienate any fans, be it, I know you want to get new kids involved and that's completely fair enough, but I don't think you should go out of your way to irritate the older fans, especially in an episode which on the one hand seems as if it's trying to placate the older fans. I just didn't understand why they did this, and I think it was a foolish move. It just seemed a bit petty and a bit sort of bitter and spiteful, and I know there's been a lot of backlash from the fan community against Guardian Code, and that must be awful if you're making a new show and everyone's just straight away poo-pooing it before even watching it. But I think the way to overcome that is to make a good show. Don't lower yourself to being petty and spiteful. Just make a good show and try and prove everyone wrong. I don't think there was any need for this kind of thing. And like I say, it doesn't even make sense in the context of the universe they've created. So that was almost ruinous to the episode, but Hexadecimal kind of saved it for me. I love Hexadecimal in this. She looks fantastic. The CGI for her is really good. She's portrayed brilliantly again by the original voice actress, and it's great that they are seemingly going to keep her in it as a regular cast member. So after watching all 10 episodes, I don't think it's terrible. I really don't. It's not the reboot that I wanted, or that most of us wanted, but I think there's potential. As I said earlier, I see little nuggets where I think that it could get better. Lest we forget, the first season of Reboot, the original Reboot, is probably the worst of the four, in my opinion, at least anyway. It's definitely the weakest of the four, and it progressively got better season by season. Arguably, season 4 isn't quite as good as season 3, but at least for those first 3 seasons, it was getting better each time. So there is the hope that it can get better, and I see elements that they can build upon, and where this could get better. And I did enjoy pretty much all of the scenes with Megabyte in every single episode. Megabyte I really enjoyed, and Hexadecimal so far, I mean, she's only been in one episode, but I really liked her, and I am excited to see what happens now. Even if Bob and Dot don't return, I am excited just to see what happens with Hexadecimal and Megabyte and how their story continues. So I do want the show to carry on, actually. I just hope that the creators, if they get a season 2, will work on it and try and connect it more to the original series, and go back and watch season 3 and 4. You know, go back and watch the last few episodes of season 2 onwards, and say, and you should see what a great show it was, and how well it's written, and why so many people are passionate to see that continued. Now, I want to talk a bit about the fan backlash against the show. And I was part of this as well. When I first saw the trailer, you know, we've waited over 15 years to see Reboot return, and there was that frustrating cliffhanger at the end of season 4 that was never resolved. So to see this trailer, which seemingly has very little to do with the original series and is so far removed from what we all know and love, it was a bit of a kick in the teeth. But at the same time, I do understand why the creators of the show felt the need to do what they've done to an extent. You know, there's no way they could make a new series of Reboot, which would be season 5. After over 15 years gap, if they were to just continue on where season 4 left off, that's going to cater to a very small percentage of people. The fan community for Reboot is reasonably small if you compare it to a lot of other franchise like Ninja Turtles and Transformers and Star Wars or whatever. So especially after so long, I see why they had to start from a new jumping on point for new viewers. Kids aren't going to tune into a show which advertises itself as being season 5 of an old 90s show. Kids aren't going to go back and do that homework to understand what's going on in a new series. They just won't bother. Whereas if they watch the Guardian Code and get into it, they may then have the enthusiasm to go back and watch the original show. And as this show progresses, I do hope that it will eventually either connect to the original and show us what happened between season 4 and the start of Guardian Code, or if it's popular, maybe if it's making enough money for Rainmaker / Mainframe Entertainment, they will just make a direct-to-DVD sequel / finale to the old series, and maybe even get some of the original creators back if the franchise proves to be financially viable. And this is where I think Reboot fans are shooting themselves in the foot by campaigning for this show to be cancelled, because, like I say, this isn't Ninja Turtles or Transformers, where if they make a bad show and everyone hates it, they still know that there's money to be made in those franchises, so they will try again in a year or two. They will reboot it and make a new cartoon series in a couple of years, or a new movie. Whereas Reboot, it doesn't have that fan base, unfortunately. It has a very passionate fan base, but it isn't as universally recognised as something like Transformers or Ninja Turtles. So if Guardian Code fails, that will be it. I don't think they're going to just reboot it again in a year's time and give fans what they want. No, that will be it. It will be dead for another decade, or if not forever, really. So I don't think just outright campaigning for the show to be cancelled and just spreading hate constantly about it is the way to go. And I completely understand why people in the fan community are upset by this show. Like I say, I felt the same way as when I saw the trailer too. and I still do to an extent. But I think constructive criticism is the way to go. You know, say, well, these bits work, these bits not so much. You know, maybe build upon this, maybe tone down these aspects of the show. Stuff like that. If you're going to reboot, don't just be, oh, this is terrible, this is the worst thing ever, it should be wiped from the earth. I don't see what's to gain from that. I don't think that we're going to get anything positive from just hating on the show. You know, Reboot existing, Reboot having a current show airing on Netflix and on TV in Canada at least, can only be a good thing. It's going to raise brand recognition. It's going to make older people think, oh yeah, I remember Reboot, that was quite a good show, wasn't it? And it's going to get potentially a new fan base on board. You know, young kids who are going to watch it and get into Reboot. And if the franchise starts making money, then Rainmaker could potentially invest that money in, as well as stuff for the new fans, stuff for older fans. It's like the Bayformers movies. You know, I hate those movies. They're terrible movies. But they did bring in a new fan base and new money to Hasbro, who were then able to invest that money in not only new toys and cartoons for the kids, but stuff aimed more at the adult collectors based on the old G1 80s characters. So I think there's a chance for that, at least, if the Guardian Code continues and is given a chance. Whereas if the Guardian Code's gone, Reboot's gone. You know, there's no point moaning and crying about what we want but don't have. And this is the same with anything in life. You've got to make the most of what you do have. And what we do have at the minute is Guardian Code. So we can only hope that that will lead to better things rather than just wanting it all destroyed and then we'll have nothing. And I'm not saying that people should just be blindly loyal to a brand. Don't just love it because it's got the Reboot name slapped on it. Of course not. But as I say, I think constructive criticism is the way to go rather than just hatred and trying to get it destroyed. So, and I know I'm probably going to get a load of hate in the comments for saying that, but I just think it's the wise thing to do in this situation. I really don't see what's to gain for Reboot fans by having the one chance we've got for Reboot to become a recognised brand and become popular flush down the toilet. So I wanted to give a level review of the show. I didn't just want to come on here and throw hate and vile at it. I wanted to point out the things that I thought were good about the show as well as the bad, and give just a level opinion on it, which I hope I have. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.